Okay, hello. I would like to speak to you about straight line. Now, a straight line can be shown algebraically in mathematics, and we use this thing here called the general equation of a straight line. So whenever we write a straight line down algebraically, it can be written in this form. And this is the general equation of a straight line. Now, x and y stand for any coordinate anywhere on the line. So xy is any coordinate, and that's where those come from here. The gradient is m, and the reason we use m is because the German word for gradient begins with m. So the gradient is how steep the line is. It's a vertical distance over the horizontal distance. In other words, it's the steepness of the slope. A gradient doesn't have any units, and basically the bigger the number, the steeper the slope. The other thing that you need to know is that if the gradient is positive, it looks like this, and if the gradient is negative, it looks like this. In other words, if the gradient is positive, the line goes up from left to right, and if the gradient is negative, it goes down from left to right. The other thing that's very important is C. In this equation here, C stands for the y-intercept, or if you like, where the line crosses the y-axis. So if you can imagine, if I've got a grid, wherever the line crosses will be the value C. And if you had to write the coordinate, then it would be 0, C, like so. Now let's look at a couple of examples. So the first one here we've got a line that's going up from left to right, and I've got to find the equation of this straight line. Now what I know is, I know that y equals mx plus c, and I need to find the gradient, and I need to find the y-intercept, or where the line crosses the y-axis. If I can find both of these things here, then I can write down the equation of the straight line. First of all, for the gradient, what I'm interested in is I'm interested in the vertical distance. In this instance, it's 3 boxes. And I'm interested in the horizontal distance. In this case, it's 6 boxes. So the gradient here is the vertical distance over the horizontal distance, which is 3 over 6. And you might recognise that that simplifies to become a half. So what I've just found out is the first bit of this is y equals a half x. Now I haven't done the c yet. Now the other thing that you'll notice is that this is positive, and that's because the line is going up from left to right. Now I need to find out where it crosses the y-axis, and I'll simply look up here on the scale and I'll see that the line crosses here at 4, and what that means is that c is equal to 4. c equals 4, so I'm just going to put a 4 at the end here, and it's a plus 4. So y equals a half x plus 4. In this example here, I'm asked to draw the line. If I'm drawing the line, the first thing I've got to do is I've got to think about where it crosses the y-axis. You can see here that if I was to compare that to our equation, y equals mx plus c, c would be minus 2 and m would be minus 4. Now, if c is minus 2, that means if I count down 2 boxes, it's going to cross the y-axis at minus 2. So I know it's crossing there. The other thing I've got to notice is the gradient is minus 4. And the easiest way that I can change this into a fraction is by saying minus 4 over 1. Now, if that's the vertical over the horizontal, that means for every 1 box that goes along horizontally, it's going to go down 4 boxes because it's a negative. The line has to go down from left to right. So for every 1 box I go along horizontally, I'm going down 4. And that means I can then draw the line using my ruler and keeping it right on the corner as much as possible so that it's neat and it crosses where it should. and that would be my equation, and that would be my line. Now let's try another couple of examples. So over here, you can see that I've got a line here, and I have to write down the equation of the line. Now first of all, I need to know that I'm going to be using y equals mx plus c. Now you should know by now that m is the gradient, which is the vertical distance over the horizontal distance. And you should know also that c is where the line crosses the y-axis. So the y-intercept, or where it crosses the y-axis. So first of all, looking at the graph here, I can see that c is equal to 3. So that makes it nice and simple. That's good. I've got 1 mark for doing that. The next thing is I need to find out what the gradient of the line is. Now, the gradient is the vertical distance, which is 2 in this instance, over the horizontal distance, which is 8 boxes along. So the gradient is equal to 2 over 8, which actually simplifies to be 1 over 4. Now, what I can now do is I can substitute these values into the original equation. So I can say that y equals a quarter x plus, it's actually not plus, it's minus 3. And the reason it's a minus 3 is because it cuts below the x-axis here. So it crosses at minus 3. So the equation is y equals a quarter x minus 3. Now, if I'm asked to draw this line here, so there's another example. First of all, I need to recognise that it's going to cross at 3. So 1, 2, 3, it's going to cross here. And I also need to know that the gradient is equal to minus a half. And again, that's the vertical distance over the horizontal distance. Now, because it's negative, it means that it's going to go down from left to right, excuse me. And for every 2 it goes along horizontally, it's going to go down 1 vertically. So it's going to cross there. And when I put my ruler in like so, I can then join these 2 dots up, like so. So I've got y equals minus a half x plus 3. Now, you might be asking yourself, where have you seen linear equations before? Well, you've actually done them before, earlier on, probably in first year. Now, do you remember seeing this here where you had tables and you had people sitting around tables? So for example, here we have 1 table and we've got 4 people sitting around the table. Here we have 2 tables and there's 6 people around that table, 3 tables and there's 8 people around the 3 tables, 4 tables and there's 10 people around the 4 tables. So then what you would have seen before is where you've got a table like this that you've got to fill in. So for 1 table we've got 4 people. For 2 tables we can see that we have 6 people. For 3 tables we have 8. 4 we have 10. And you might recognise by now that there's a pattern here, and by 5 tables you would have 12 people. Now the question is, can we find a formula to represent this pattern here? And that actually is a linear equation. Now how you might have seen that before is the bottom is equal to the jump times the top plus or minus a mystery number. Now let's have a wee think about what that means. If you were to start here, you'll notice that it goes up in 2s all the way up. So the bottom is how many people there are. The jump is 2 people, 2 times the top, which in this instance is T for tables. And then what would I need to add or subtract in order to make the equation work? So if I did 2 times 1, it gives me 2. What do I add on to get to 4? I would add on 2. 2 times 2 gives me 4. What do I add on to get 6? I would add on 2. 2 times 3 gives me 6. What would I add on to get 8? I would add on 2. So therefore, my formula is 2t plus 2, because each time I'm adding on 2. Now, when I see this here, what I can also work out is I can work out how many people would be able to fit round 17 tables. So if I said that I was going to replace this 17 for this t, then the people would be 2 times 17, which is 34, plus 2, that means I've got 36 people that can sit round 17 tables. Okay, let's look at another wee example. If we have triangles that are made out of matches, so you can see here that there's actually 3 matches in one triangle, there's 5 matches in 2 triangles, and there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 matches in 3 triangles. Well, if we were to put that into our table, one triangle would be 3 matches, 2 triangles would be 5 matches, 3 triangles would be 7 matches. In other words, you'll notice here that it's going up in 2s each time. So this here would be 9. Now, if I wanted to create a formula for that, the bottom would be equal to the jump times the top plus or minus a mystery number. So the bottom here is m for matches is equal to the jump, which is 2, that's the same number here, times the top, which is t, and then what would I need to do? So if I have 2 times 1 gives me 2, what do I need to do to get 3? I would need to add on 1 each time. 2 times 2 is 4, add on 1 gives me 5. 2 times 3 is 6, add on 1 gives me 7. So I've got 2t plus 1, and that there is my formula. Now that means that if I'm given any number of triangles, I can work out how many matches I would need for that. But similarly, I could actually rearrange this if I substitute in the other value. So if I know that I've got 43 is equal to 2t plus 1, I can rearrange that. I can write that in a different order if you prefer. I can say 2t plus 1 is equal to 43. What I could then do is I could take 1 away from both sides and say that 2t is equal to 42. Divide both sides by 2, and that would give me t is equal to 21 triangles with 43 matches. So that's a wee bit of background information. What I want to do is I want to take you back to what we were discussing at the start of the video when we were talking about y equals mx plus c. You'll notice that that's very similar to what you saw and what you've done before. What I want you to be able to do is I want you to be able to draw the triangle, the lines given the formula, and also be able to recognise the formula when you're given the line. And I'm going to set you a wee exercise so that you can try that for yourself. The last time that you did that was probably about 6 or 7 weeks ago.